Welcome, weary travelers of the modern world, to a journey that will carry you through the mists of time and into the realm of the gods. Tonight, as you settle into comfort and prepare for rest, let the ancient tales of Mount Olympus wash over you like gentle waves upon a distant shore. Close your eyes and allow yourself to be transported to an age when the world was young, when mortals looked to the heavens with wonder and fear, and when the thunder that rolled across the sky was not merely weather, but the voice of the most powerful being in all creation. This is the story of Zeus, the king of the gods, the wielder of lightning, the master of the heavens and the earth below. His tale is not merely one of divine power, but of struggle, triumph, love, rage, wisdom, and folly. It is a story that spans from the very birth of the cosmos to the golden age of heroes, a narrative woven through with the threads of fate, family, and the eternal dance between order and chaos. But who was Zeus before he became the mighty ruler whose very name inspired awe across the ancient world? How did a hidden infant, secreted away on a remote island, grow to overthrow the most fearsome tyrant the universe had ever known? What battles were fought in the celestial realm that determined the very structure of reality as we know it? These questions and countless others will unfold before you like the petals of a night-blooming flower, revealing their secrets in the gentle darkness of your rest. The ancient Greeks understood something profound about the nature of existence. They knew that the forces that shape our world, the passions that drive our hearts, and the struggles that define our lives are not random or meaningless. Instead, they saw these as reflections of greater cosmic dramas, eternal stories played out by beings of immense power and surprisingly human emotion. In Zeus, they found the ultimate embodiment of this truth, a god who was both supremely powerful and deeply flawed, both the source of justice and the cause of chaos. Tonight, you will hear of his secret birth in a cave on the island of Crete, where his mother Rhea hid him from his cannibalistic father, Kronos. You will learn of his youth among the nymphs and shepherds, growing in strength and wisdom while his siblings languished in their father's belly. You will witness the great war that shook the very foundations of existence, the Titanomachy, where Zeus led his fellow gods against the ancient Titans in a conflict that lasted for 10 long years. But the story does not end with victory and war. Power, as Zeus would learn, brings its own challenges. You will discover how he divided the cosmos with his brothers, claiming the sky as his domain while Poseidon took the seas and Hades ruled the underworld. You will see how he established his court on Mount Olympus, gathering around him the 12 great gods who would rule alongside him. Yet even among family, harmony would prove elusive. The tales of Zeus are filled with love and passion, for this was a god whose heart was as vast as the sky he ruled. You will hear of his marriages, first to the wise Titaness Metis, then to his sister Hera, who became his queen and eternal rival. But Zeus's affections were not contained by the bonds of marriage, and his numerous loves, both divine and mortal, would give birth to some of the most famous figures in all of mythology. From Athena, who sprang fully grown from his head, to Hercules, whose strength became legendary among mortals, the children of Zeus shaped the world in countless ways. Yet with great power comes great responsibility, and Zeus's role as king of the gods was never an easy one. You will learn of the challenges to his authority, from the revolt of the giants to the uprising of the monster Typhon, whose 100 heads breathed fire and whose voice shook the earth. Each crisis tested not only Zeus's power but his wisdom, forcing him to grow from a young rebel into a true ruler. The relationship between gods and mortals forms another crucial thread in our tale. Before we dive in, I want to quickly thank our small community of viewers like you for subscribing and liking these videos. We've reached nearly 100 subscribers, and our goal is to hit 1,000 so we can reduce the amount of ads that YouTube shows. Until then, YouTube can place as many ads as they want on our videos, so please ensure you are subscribed so we can fight back against YouTube, which runs way too many advertisements. Thank you again, and let's continue into tonight's topic. Zeus was not a distant deity, removed from human affairs. Instead, he was deeply involved in the lives of mortals, sometimes as a protector, sometimes as a judge, and sometimes as a lover who walked among them in disguise. You will hear of his interactions with kings and peasants, heroes and villains, and how his decisions shaped the great events of the heroic age. Justice was perhaps Zeus's greatest concern, for he saw himself as the ultimate arbiter of right and wrong. Yet his own sense of justice was complex and sometimes contradictory, reflecting the ancient Greek understanding that even divine justice is not always comprehensible to mortal minds. You will discover stories of his judgments, his punishments, and his mercy, each revealing different facets of his character. The story of Zeus is also the story of prophecy and fate, for even the king of the gods was not entirely free from the decrees of destiny. Ancient prophecies spoke of a son who would overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his father. How Zeus dealt with this threat, and how it shaped his relationships with his wives and children, forms one of the most compelling aspects of his mythology. As we journey together through these ancient tales, you will find that they speak to timeless themes that resonate even today. The struggle between generations, the complexity of family relationships, the burden of leadership, the nature of justice, and the eternal human quest to understand our place in the cosmos. These stories have survived for thousands of years, not merely because they are entertaining, but because they touch something deep and fundamental in the human experience. The ancient poets who first told these tales understood the power of story to heal, to teach, and to transform. They knew that in the quiet hours of the night, when the busy concerns of daily life fade away, the human soul is most receptive to the deeper truths that stories can convey. Tonight, as you listen to the saga of Zeus unfold, you are participating in an ancient tradition, connecting with countless generations who have found comfort and wisdom in these timeless tales. So settle back, let your breathing slow, and allow the gentle rhythm of the narrative to carry you away from the concerns of the present moment. Whether you drift into peaceful sleep or remain awake to hear every word, the story will continue, weaving its magic around you like a protective cloak. The tale of Zeus is vast and rich, filled with adventure and wonder, but told tonight in a voice designed to soothe and calm. In the pages of mythology, we find not escape from reality, but a deeper understanding of it. The gods of ancient Greece were not perfect beings to be worshipped without question, but complex characters whose struggles mirror our own. In Zeus, reflected the eternal human desire for power and the responsibility that comes with it, the longing for love and the pain of loss, the quest for justice and the recognition of our own limitations. The journey we are about to embark upon will take us from the dawn of creation to the twilight of the gods, from the highest peaks of Mount Olympus to the deepest chambers of the underworld. We will witness cosmic battles and intimate family moments, grand gestures of divine power and subtle acts of human kindness. Through it all, the figure of Zeus will remain at the center, sometimes heroic, sometimes tragic, always compelling. As the ancient Greeks knew well, the best stories are those that work on multiple levels, offering entertainment to the casual listener and profound wisdom to those who seek it. The tales of Zeus can be enjoyed simply as exciting adventures filled with magic and wonder, or they can be contemplated as deep meditations on the nature of power, responsibility, and the human condition. Tonight, there is no need to choose between these approaches. Simply allow the story to wash over you, and let it speak to whatever part of your being is most receptive. Some listeners will find themselves fascinated by the intricate family relationships among the gods, while others will be drawn to the epic battles and dramatic conflicts. Still others will be moved by the love stories and the complex interplay between divine and mortal worlds. The beauty of mythology lies in its ability to contain all these elements simultaneously, creating a rich tapestry that can be appreciated from many different perspectives. As we begin our journey into the world of Zeus, remember that you are not merely hearing a story, but participating in an ancient ritual of storytelling that has comforted and inspired humanity for thousands of years. So breathe deeply, relax your body, and open your mind to the wonders that await. The thunder is beginning to rumble in the distance. The lightning is starting to flash across the ancient sky, and the voice of Zeus himself is calling us back to a time when gods walked the earth and anything was possible. The greatest story ever told is about to begin. Chapter 1. The Curse of Kronos and the Secret Birth. The tale begins with the rise of Kronos and the terrible prophecy that drives him to devour his children. We witness the desperate plan of Rhea to save her youngest son, Zeus's secret birth in a Cretan cave, and the deception that allows him to survive while his siblings remain trapped in their father's belly. In the beginning, there was only chaos, a swirling, formless void. From this abyss emerged Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. Their union brought forth the Titans, powerful beings of immense strength and dominion. Among them was Kronos, youngest of the first generation of Titans, a figure destined for both greatness and infamy. But greatness rarely comes without a price, does it? And for Kronos, that price would be paid in paranoia, in cruelty, and ultimately, in the lives of his own children. For Uranus, their father, was not pleased with his Titan offspring. He saw in them a potential challenge to his authority, a threat to his eternal reign. And so, he imprisoned them within the depths of Gaia, deep within the Earth's core, a place of endless darkness and torment. Gaia, writhing in pain from the weight of her imprisoned children, pleaded with them to rise against their tyrannical father. Only Kronos, filled with ambition and resentment, dared to answer her call. He armed himself with a sickle, forged from the very substance of the earth, and lay in wait for Uranus. When Uranus descended to embrace Gaia, Kronos sprang from his hiding place and castrated his father with the sickle. From the blood that spilled upon the earth, the giants, the Erinyes, Furies, and the Meliae, ash tree nymphs, were born, and from the sea foam where Uranus's severed genitals landed, Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, emerged. With Uranus overthrown, Kronos seized control of the cosmos, ushering in a new era of Titan rule. He married his sister, Rhea, a Titaness of beauty and grace, and together they began to populate the world with their children. But the shadow of his past, the curse of his own actions, would soon darken his reign. For before Uranus fell, he uttered a terrible prophecy, that Kronos himself would be overthrown by one of his own sons. The words echoed in Kronos' mind, a constant reminder of the fate that awaited him, a fate he was determined to avoid at all costs. Imagine the paranoia that must have consumed him, the fear that gnawed at his insides with every newborn cry. How does one defy destiny itself? Kronos, in his fear and desperation, chose a path of unimaginable cruelty. As each of his children was born, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, he snatched them from Rhea's arms and swallowed them whole. One by one, they disappeared into the darkness of his belly, their cries silenced, their lives extinguished before they had even begun. Can you picture Rhea's anguish, the unbearable pain of losing child after child, the helplessness of being unable to protect them from her husband's monstrous act? How long could she endure such torment? How long before she broke completely? Rhea, though a goddess, was a mother first, and a mother's love knows no bounds, recognizes no limits. She could not, would not, allow Kronos to devour all her children. She resolved to save her next child, her youngest son, from the same horrific fate. And so, when she became pregnant with Zeus, Rhea hatched a plan, a desperate gamble to deceive her husband and protect her unborn child. She confided in her parents, Gaia and Uranus, seeking their wisdom and guidance. Together, they devised a scheme to spirit the baby away to a secret location, far from Kronos' reach. When the time came for Zeus to be born, Rhea traveled to the island of Crete, a land of rugged mountains and hidden caves. In the depths of a secluded cave on Mount Ida, she gave birth to her son, the future king of the gods. But how to deceive Kronos? How to make him believe that he had swallowed his child as he had done with the others? Rhea, with the help of Gaia, wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to Kronos as his newborn son. Kronos, suspecting nothing, greedily swallowed the stone whole, believing he had averted the prophecy. Imagine the relief Rhea must have felt, the surge of hope that coursed through her veins as she watched Kronos unknowingly devour a mere stone. But her task was far from over. She still had to ensure Zeus's safety and nurture him into the powerful god he was destined to become. And so Zeus was hidden away in the Cretan cave, far from the clutches of his father, protected by Gaia's watchful eye and the care of devoted nymphs. He would grow in secret, unaware of the terrible fate that had befallen his siblings, unaware of the destiny that awaited him. But what was life like for Zeus in that hidden sanctuary? Who were the figures that shaped his childhood? And how did he learn of his true identity, his divine heritage, and the terrible wrong that had been committed against his family? That is the story we'll uncover next. Chapter 2. The Hidden Prince of Crete. Zeus's childhood and youth on Mount Ida, raised by the nymphs Adrastea and Ida, protected by the Curetus warriors, and nurtured by the goat Amalthea. His growing awareness of his divine nature and the gradual revelation of his true destiny as he matures in secret. Hidden away from the wrath of Kronos, the infant Zeus found sanctuary. Not in some gleaming palace or on a throne of gold, but nestled within the rugged embrace of Mount Ida on the island of Crete. It was a world of whispering winds and ancient forests, a place where the very air hummed with a primal energy. But how could such a vulnerable being, the last hope of the Olympians, survive in this wilderness? The answer lies in the extraordinary guardians who took him in. Adrastea and Ida, nymphs of unparalleled grace and wisdom, became his surrogate mothers. They knew the weight of the prophecy, the terrible fate that awaited Zeus if Kronos were to discover him. So they nurtured him with unwavering devotion, their gentle hands tending to his every need. Imagine a hidden grotto, bathed in dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves. Here, amidst the scent of wildflowers and the murmur of a nearby spring, Zeus spent his earliest days. Adrastea and Ida sang him lullabies of ancient power, tales of the cosmos and the destiny that awaited him. They fed him honey-sweetened milk, not from a mortal cow, but from Amalthea, a goat of divine origin. But even in this idyllic sanctuary, danger lurked. Kronos' spies were everywhere, their eyes and ears constantly searching for any sign of the hidden child. To protect Zeus, the Curetes, fierce warriors with bronze shields and booming voices, formed an impenetrable barrier around his cradle. And here's the twist. To mask the sound of the infant god's cries, the Curetes would clash their shields together in a frenzied rhythmic dance. The din echoed through the mountains, a constant cacophony that effectively concealed Zeus's presence from any unwelcome ears. It was a symphony of protection, a desperate act of defiance against the tyranny of Kronos. As Zeus grew, so did his awareness. He wasn't just a child, he was different. The world seemed to respond to him. Flowers bloomed brighter in his presence. The wind whispered secrets in his ear, and the very stones beneath his feet seemed to vibrate with energy. Adrastea and Ida began to teach him about his lineage, about the Olympian gods and the reign of terror that Kronos had imposed. They told him of his swallowed siblings, trapped within their father's belly, waiting for the day of their liberation. Can you imagine the weight of such knowledge on the young god's shoulders? He was just a boy, yet he carried the hopes of an entire pantheon. The nymphs instilled in him not only a sense of responsibility, but also a deep understanding of justice, compassion, and the importance of fighting for what is right. The goat Amalthea played a crucial role in Zeus's development. Her milk wasn't merely sustenance, it was a source of divine power, imbuing him with strength and resilience. And from her horn, a cornucopia overflowed with endless bounty, symbolizing the abundance and prosperity that Zeus would one day bring to the world. One day, while playing in the mountains, Zeus stumbled upon a hidden cave. Inside, he found ancient texts, scrolls filled with prophecies and forgotten lore. As he deciphered the cryptic symbols, he began to understand the full extent of his destiny. He was not just meant to survive, he was meant to overthrow Kronos and restore balance to the cosmos. The revelation was both exhilarating and terrifying. He was just a boy, raised in secret, with no army, no weapons, and no experience in battle. How could he possibly challenge the most powerful titan in existence? But within Zeus, a spark ignited. A fire of determination, fueled by the injustice he had witnessed and the love he felt for his siblings. He knew that he couldn't do it alone. He would need allies, powerful beings who shared his vision of a better world. his training intensified. Adrasteia and Ida taught him the arts of diplomacy and strategy, while the Curetes honed his skills in combat. He learned to wield the power that coursed through his veins, the raw energy of the storm. He began to experiment with this power, summoning bolts of lightning and commanding the winds. The mountains echoed with the sound of his growing strength, a testament to the hidden prince who was preparing to claim his birthright. But with each display of power came a greater risk of discovery. Kronos' agents were growing more vigilant, their search intensifying. The nymphs and Curetes knew that they couldn't keep Zeus hidden forever. The time was fast approaching when he would have to emerge from the shadows and confront his destiny. The hidden prince was about to become a king. He had to make a choice: remain hidden, safe but powerless, or embrace his destiny and risk everything. What would do? The answer, of course, was inevitable. Zeus was a god, destined for greatness. He could not stand idly by while his siblings remained imprisoned and the cosmos suffered under Kronos' tyrannical rule. The decision was made. The training was complete. The time had come for Zeus to leave the sanctuary of Mount Ida and embark on the perilous journey to confront his father. But how could he possibly hope to defeat Kronos? The Titan was immortal, immensely powerful, and surrounded by loyal followers. Zeus would need a plan, a strategy that would exploit Kronos' weaknesses and rally support for his cause. And that's where Meti comes in. A Titaness renowned for her unparalleled wisdom and cunning, Meti was destined to play a pivotal role in Zeus's rise to power. She possessed knowledge that could turn the tide of the war against Kronos, secrets that could unlock the path to victory. But gaining her trust would not be easy. Meti was wary of both the Titans and the Olympians, distrustful of their motives and their lust for power. Zeus would have to prove himself worthy of her alliance, demonstrating that he was not just another power-hungry god, but a true champion of justice and freedom. So, Zeus left Mount Ida, leaving behind the only home he had ever known. He carried with him the blessings of Adrasteia and Ida, the protection of the Curetes, and the boundless power of Amalthea's milk. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, to confront his destiny, and to liberate his siblings from the belly of Kronos. His journey took him across treacherous landscapes and through dangerous realms. He faced mythical creatures and cunning adversaries, each encounter testing his strength and resolve. But with each challenge he grew stronger, wiser, and more determined to fulfill his destiny. Finally, he reached the domain of Meti, a hidden sanctuary where she guarded her secrets and plotted her own course in the cosmic conflict. Zeus approached her with humility and respect, acknowledging her wisdom and seeking her guidance. He spoke of his vision for a better world, a world where justice prevailed and the gods ruled with compassion. He shared his plan to overthrow Kronos and liberate his siblings, emphasizing that he could not do it alone. Metis listened intently, her eyes piercing and assessing. She saw in Zeus not just a powerful god, but a leader with a genuine desire to bring about positive change. She recognized his potential, his unwavering resolve, and his capacity for both strength and compassion. And so, she agreed to join him. She pledged her wisdom and her cunning to his cause, becoming his most trusted advisor and his most valuable ally. Together they devised a plan to challenge Kronos, a plan that would exploit his weaknesses and rally the forces of rebellion. The first step was to free Zeus's swallowed siblings. Metis concocted a powerful potion, a mixture of herbs and magic that would force Kronos to regurgitate his offspring. It was a risky plan, but it was the only way to liberate Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades and Poseidon from their prison within their father's belly. Zeus, disguised as a cupbearer, infiltrated Kronos' court. He served the Titan the poisoned wine, watching with bated breath as Kronos drank it down. The potion worked its magic, and Kronos writhed in agony, vomiting forth the 5 fully grown gods and goddesses he had swallowed years before. The Olympians were free. Imagine the scene: 5 powerful gods and goddesses, emerging from the darkness of their father's belly, blinking in the light of the world for the first time. They were filled with rage and a thirst for revenge, eager to punish Kronos for his cruelty and tyranny. Zeus rallied his siblings, declaring his intention to overthrow Kronos and establish a new order in the cosmos. He spoke of justice, freedom, and the importance of working together to achieve their common goal. And so, the stage was set for the greatest war in cosmic history, the Titanomachy. The Olympians, led by Zeus, would face off against the Titans, led by Kronos, in a battle that would shake the very foundations of existence. But Zeus knew that he couldn't rely solely on his siblings. He needed more allies, powerful beings who could tip the scales in their favor. And that's when he remembered the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones. These were monstrous creatures, imprisoned by Kronos in the depths of Tartarus. The Cyclopes were renowned for their skill in crafting weapons, while the 100-handed ones possessed unimaginable strength. If Zeus could win their loyalty, they would be invaluable assets in the war against the Titans. He descended into Tartarus, braving the darkness and the horrors that lurked within. He spoke to the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones, promising them freedom and revenge if they joined his cause. They were hesitant at first, wary of trusting another god. But Zeus convinced them of his sincerity, his commitment to justice, and his determination to overthrow Kronos' tyrannical rule. And so, the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones joined the Olympians, bolstering their ranks and adding their immense power to the fight. The stage was set. The armies were gathered. The war was about to begin. But the Titanomachy was not just a battle of brute force, it was a war of strategy, of alliances, and of cunning. Zeus would need all of his wisdom, his courage, and his divine power to overcome the Titans and claim his rightful place as the king of the gods. The war raged for 10 long years, a conflict of epic proportions that pitted the Olympians against the Titans in a battle for control of the cosmos. The clashes were so violent, the destruction so widespread, that the very fabric of reality seemed to tear apart. Zeus, armed with the lightning bolts forged by the Cyclopes, led the charge against Kronos and his forces. He unleashed his divine power with fury, striking down Titans with thunderous blows and unleashing storms that shook the heavens. The other Olympians fought valiantly alongside him. Poseidon, god of the sea, summoned monstrous waves to engulf the Titan armies. Hades, god of the underworld, unleashed hordes of the dead to terrorize his enemies. Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, fueled by their own rage and thirst for revenge, fought with unwavering determination. But the Titans were not easily defeated. They were ancient and powerful beings, with immense strength and a deep understanding of the cosmos. Kronos, in particular, was a formidable opponent, wielding his scythe with deadly precision and commanding the forces of darkness with terrifying authority. The battles raged across mountains and oceans, through forests and plains. The earth trembled beneath the feet of the warring gods and titans, and the sky was filled with the deafening roar of thunder and the blinding flash of lightning. Zeus faced Kronos in single combat, their clash shaking the very foundations of existence. The two titans fought with unimaginable power, their blows capable of shattering mountains and boiling oceans. But Zeus, fueled by his determination and his divine power, proved to be the stronger. He unleashed a barrage of lightning bolts, striking Kronos with relentless force. The Titans staggered, weakened by the onslaught, and Zeus seized his opportunity. With a final thunderous blow, Zeus struck Kronos down, shattering his scythe and casting him into the depths of Tartarus, the darkest and most desolate region of the underworld. The Titans, their leader defeated, crumbled before the might of the Olympians. They were imprisoned in Tartarus, their reign of terror brought to an end. The war was over. The Olympians had triumphed. Zeus had fulfilled his destiny. But the victory came at a great cost. The cosmos was scarred by the devastation of the Titanomachy, and the Olympians were left to pick up the pieces and rebuild the world. The first task was to divide the spoils of war. Zeus and his brothers, Poseidon and Hades, drew lots to determine their respective domains. Zeus claimed the sky and the heavens, becoming the king of the gods. Poseidon claimed the sea, becoming the ruler of the oceans. And Hades claimed the underworld, becoming the lord of the dead. With their domains established, the Olympians set about creating a new order in the cosmos. They established Mount Olympus as their seat of power, a magnificent realm of clouds and gold where they would rule over gods and mortals alike. Zeus, as the king of the gods, selected the 12 Olympian gods who would form his inner circle. These were the most powerful and influential deities in the pantheon. each with their own unique domains and responsibilities. But even with the Titans defeated and the cosmos under his control, Zeus knew that his reign would not be without its challenges. There were still threats lurking in the shadows, enemies who would seek to challenge his authority and overthrow his rule. And there was also the prophecy that a son of Zeus would one day rise up and overthrow him, just as he had overthrown Kronos. This prophecy would haunt Zeus throughout his reign, shaping his decisions and influencing his relationships with both gods and mortals. It was a constant reminder of the precariousness of power and the ever-present threat of rebellion. But before we delve into the challenges to Zeus's authority and the looming shadow of the prophecy, we must first explore the loves of Zeus, the divine consorts and sacred marriages that shaped his personal life and the future of the Olympian pantheon. For within those relationships lie the seeds of both creation and destruction, the echoes of ancient power and the whispers of destinies yet to be fulfilled. Chapter 3. The Liberation and the Gathering Storm. Zeus's return to challenge Kronos, the freeing of his swallowed siblings through Metis's clever potion, and the initial gathering of allies including the Cyclopes and Hundred-Handed Ones. The stage is set for the greatest war in cosmic history. The time of hiding was over. The young god, nurtured in secret, was now a man, his eyes reflecting the vastness of the sky and the power that coursed through his veins. Zeus knew his destiny. He knew the monstrous evil that held his siblings captive, and he knew what he had to do. His first task was fraught with peril. He had to confront Kronos, his all-powerful father. But how could he, a single god, hope to defeat the Titan king? The answer, as it often does, lay in cunning and strategy. He needed a weapon, not of brute force, but of deception. Enter Metis, the titaness of wisdom and deep thought. She possessed a mind as sharp as any blade, a gift for plotting and planning that even the gods envied. Zeus sought her counsel, laying bare his plan to free his siblings and overthrow Kronos. Metis listened intently, her eyes gleaming with intelligence, and then she offered a solution. A potion. A concoction so potent, so vile, that it could force even a god to regurgitate what he had swallowed. It was a dangerous gamble, but it was their only hope. Metis set to work, gathering rare herbs and mystical ingredients, whispering ancient incantations as she brewed the foul mixture. Zeus, meanwhile, ventured into the heart of Kronos' domain. He presented himself as a new cupbearer, a humble servant eager to please the Titan king. Kronos, ever suspicious, scrutinized the young god, but Zeus's disguise was flawless, his eyes filled with feigned deference. He was allowed to enter the Titan's court, a viper in the nest. For days, Zeus served Kronos, waiting for the opportune moment. He endured the Titan's cruel taunts and the oppressive atmosphere of his court, all the while biding his time. Finally, the moment arrived. He offered Kronos the poisoned cup, a sweet wine laced with Metis's potent potion. Kronos, unsuspecting, drained the cup in a single gulp. The effect was immediate and violent. He convulsed, his body racked with unbearable pain. And then, one by one, his swallowed children emerged from his gullet, fully grown and filled with rage. First came Poseidon, god of the seas, his eyes blazing with fury. Then Hades, lord of the underworld, his face grim and implacable. Hera, queen of the gods, radiating regal anger. Hestia, goddess of the hearth, her eyes filled with sorrow for the lost years. And finally, Demeter, goddess of the harvest, her face etched with determination. The Olympians were free, but their ordeal had only just begun. They stood before Kronos, weakened but still formidable, surrounded by his loyal Titan allies. The battle was joined, a clash of god against Titan, of old order against new. Zeus, now revealed in his full glory, unleashed his power. Lightning crackled from his fingertips, thunder echoed through the halls of Kronos' palace. Poseidon summoned tidal waves that crashed against the Titan ranks. Hades unleashed the terrors of the underworld, sending shadows and spectres to torment their enemies. But the Titans were not easily defeated. They were beings of immense strength and ancient power. The battle raged for what seemed like an eternity, the very foundations of the cosmos trembling with the force of their conflict. Zeus knew that they could not win this war alone. They needed allies, beings of even greater power than the Titans themselves. He remembered the stories his mother had told him, tales of monstrous beings imprisoned deep within the earth, beings who had been imprisoned by Kronos himself, the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones. These were creatures of immense strength and skill. The Cyclopes, with their single, all-seeing eyes, were masters of craftsmanship, capable of forging weapons of unimaginable power. The 100-handed ones, each possessing the strength of 100 men, were unstoppable warriors. But how could Zeus convince these beings to join his cause? They had been betrayed by Kronos, imprisoned for centuries, and they had every reason to distrust the gods. Zeus decided to descend into the depths of Tartarus, the abyss where these monstrous beings were held captive. The journey was perilous. Tartarus was a realm of darkness and despair, a place where even the gods feared to tread. But Zeus pressed on, driven by his determination to liberate his siblings and overthrow Kronos. He found the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones chained and guarded by fearsome monsters. He spoke to them, not as a king, but as a fellow prisoner of Kronos' tyranny. He told them of his plan to overthrow the Titans and restore balance to the cosmos. At first, they were skeptical. They had been promised freedom before, only to be betrayed. But Zeus's sincerity, his unwavering determination, eventually won them over. They agreed to join his cause on one condition, that he would free them from their chains. Zeus, with his divine power, shattered the chains that bound the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones. They emerged from Tartarus, their eyes blazing with fury and gratitude. They were ready to fight. The arrival of the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones turned the tide of the war. The Cyclopes, true to their word, forged weapons of incredible power for the Olympians. For Zeus, they crafted the thunderbolt, a weapon of unimaginable destruction. For Poseidon, they forged the trident, capable of summoning storms and earthquakes. And for Hades, they created a helmet of invisibility, allowing him to move unseen among his enemies. The 100-handed ones, with their immense strength, tore through the Titan ranks like a hurricane. They crushed their enemies with their bare hands, their 100 arms flailing in a whirlwind of destruction. The Titans, faced with this new onslaught, began to falter. Their ranks were decimated, their morale shattered. Kronos, seeing his empire crumbling around him, flew into a rage. He unleashed the full force of his power, but it was not enough. Zeus, wielding his thunderbolt, confronted Kronos in a final epic showdown. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, and the very heavens trembled with the force of their battle. Zeus, fueled by his righteous anger and the support of his allies, finally managed to overpower Kronos. He struck the Titan King with his thunderbolt, sending him crashing to the earth. Kronos, defeated and humiliated, was banished to Tartarus, the same abyss where he had imprisoned the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones. With Kronos defeated, the Titans were routed. The war was over. The Olympians had triumphed. A new era had begun, but the victory had come at a great cost. The cosmos was scarred by the war, the earth ravaged, and the hearts of the gods filled with the memory of the terrible conflict. Now, the task before them was to rebuild, to establish a new order, to create a world worthy of the gods. Zeus, as the leader of the Olympians, knew that this would not be easy. There were still many challenges to overcome, many enemies to face. But he was ready. He had proven himself to be a worthy leader, a powerful warrior, and a cunning strategist. He had gathered allies, overcome seemingly impossible odds, and emerged victorious from the greatest war in cosmic history. The stage was set for the rise of Olympus, for the reign of the Olympian gods. But the echoes of the Titanomachy still reverberated through the cosmos, a constant reminder of the power of chaos and the fragility of order. And so, the Olympians began to build their new home, a magnificent palace atop Mount Olympus, a symbol of their power and their triumph. They would rule the world, guide humanity, and shape the destiny of the cosmos. But even as they celebrated their victory, a new threat was brewing in the shadows. A threat that would test their power and their unity like never before. The world was now divided, as Zeus and his brothers decided the fates of the realms. But what would this division look like, and how would their individual domains shape the balance of power? That is a story for another time as we delve into the division of the cosmos and the rise of Olympus. Chapter 4. The Titanomachy, the War of the Titans. the epic 10-year war between the Olympians and Titans, featuring massive battles that shake the very foundations of existence. Zeus's mastery of the lightning bolt, the strategic alliances formed, and the ultimate victory that establishes the new order of the universe. The air crackled with anticipation. After years of clandestine training and strategic maneuvering, Zeus was ready to confront his father Kronos and liberate his siblings from their agonizing prison. The time for whispers and shadows was over. The era of thunder and lightning was about to begin. But how could a young god, barely on the cusp of his power, hope to challenge a titan of Kronos' magnitude? The answer, as you might suspect, lay in a combination of cunning, allies, and a weapon unlike any the world had ever seen. Zeus knew he couldn't face Kronos alone. The Titans were beings of immense power, their strength rooted in the very fabric of the cosmos. To stand a chance, he needed to build an army, a coalition of forces willing to defy the established order. His first and perhaps most crucial act was the liberation of his siblings, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Hestia, and Demeter. They were trapped, you remember, within Kronos' belly, their existence a living nightmare. How could Zeus possibly free them? This is where Metis, goddess of wisdom and cunning, played her indispensable part. She concocted a potent emetic, a potion so powerful that it could force even a titan to regurgitate what he had swallowed. Disguised, Metis infiltrated Kronos' court and, with subtle grace, administered the concoction. The effect was immediate and violent. Kronos, seized by convulsions, expelled Zeus's siblings, fully grown and burning with righteous fury. Imagine the scene. 6 gods, reunited after years of torment, standing shoulder to shoulder, their eyes blazing with determination. The Olympians were born. But even with his siblings by his side, Zeus knew they were still outnumbered. The Titans, led by Kronos, controlled the heights of Mount Olympus, their power seemingly absolute. To break their hold, Zeus needed more than just divine siblings. He needed allies who possessed raw, untamed strength. He turned to the depths of Tartarus, to the forgotten children of Gaia and Uranus, the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires, the hundred-handed ones. These monstrous beings, imprisoned by Kronos for their terrifying appearance, harbored a deep resentment towards the Titans. Zeus, with his characteristic blend of courage and diplomacy, offered them freedom and a chance for revenge. The Cyclopes, grateful for their release, repaid Zeus in a way that would forever change the course of the war. They were master craftsmen, capable of forging weapons of unimaginable power. To Zeus, they gifted the thunderbolt, a weapon of pure energy, capable of shaking the heavens themselves. To Poseidon, they gave the trident, which could command the seas and shatter the earth. And to Hades, they crafted a helm of darkness, rendering him invisible to all. The Hecatoncheires, with their 100 hands and 50 heads each, were living engines of destruction. Their strength was unparalleled, their loyalty unwavering. With the Olympians, the Cyclopes, and the Hecatoncheires united, Zeus was ready to wage war. And what a war it was! The Titanomachy, the War of the Titans, raged for 10 long years. The very foundations of the cosmos trembled as gods and titans clashed in a battle for supremacy. The clash of divine weapons echoed across the heavens. The earth groaned under the weight of their struggle, and the seas boiled with primordial fury. The Titans, entrenched on Mount Olympus, held the high ground. They hurled mountains at their enemies, unleashed storms of fire and rock, and shook the very fabric of reality with their immense power. Kronos, the king of the Titans, was a force of nature, his scythe reaping destruction wherever it swung. But the Olympians, fueled by their desire for freedom and justice, fought with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. Poseidon unleashed tidal waves that crashed against the Titans' fortifications. Hades, cloaked in invisibility, struck from the shadows, sowing chaos and confusion among the enemy ranks. The other Olympians fought with equal valor, each contributing their unique powers to the cause. And then, there was Zeus. The young god, now wielding the thunderbolt, unleashed its power upon the Titans with devastating effect. Bolts of pure energy ripped through the sky, striking down Titans with terrifying force. The thunder echoed across the battlefield, instilling fear in the hearts of the enemy and bolstering the courage of his allies. The Hecatoncheires, true to their name, hurled boulders the size of mountains at the Titans, overwhelming their defenses with sheer brute force. The Cyclopes, working tirelessly in their forges, replenished the Olympians' weapons, ensuring they were always ready for battle. But the war was far from easy. The Titans were ancient and powerful, their resolve unwavering. For years the battle raged back and forth, neither side gaining a decisive advantage. The gods and Titans alike suffered grievous wounds. The earth was scarred by their battles, and the heavens wept with cosmic sorrow. What turned the tide? Strategy, you might guess, plays a huge role in a conflict of this scale. Zeus realized that to defeat the Titans, he needed to strike at their leadership, to break their morale and shatter their unity. He focused his attacks on Kronos, engaging him in a series of epic duels that shook the heavens. Imagine the clash of thunderbolt and scythe, the blinding flashes of energy, the earth-shattering impacts. Zeus, though younger and less experienced than Kronos, fought with a courage and determination that bordered on recklessness. He learned from each encounter, adapting his tactics, honing his skills, and pushing himself to the very limits of his divine power. Finally, after years of relentless fighting, Zeus saw his opportunity. During one particularly fierce battle, as Kronos prepared to unleash a devastating attack, Zeus unleashed the full power of the thunderbolt. The bolt struck Kronos with unimaginable force, shattering his scythe and sending him reeling. With Kronos weakened, the other Olympians pressed their attack. Poseidon unleashed a massive tidal wave that swept across the battlefield, washing away the remaining Titans. Hades, striking from the shadows, eliminated key commanders, sowing panic and disarray among the enemy ranks. The Hecatoncheires, with their relentless barrage of boulders, overwhelmed the Titans' defenses, forcing them to retreat. The Cyclopes, working tirelessly in their forges, provided the Olympians with the weapons they needed to press their advantage. Slowly but surely, the Titans were pushed back, their lines broken, their morale shattered. After 10 long years of war, the Olympians were finally victorious. Kronos and the defeated Titans were cast into the depths of Tartarus, their reign of terror brought to an end. The cosmos held its breath. The old order had been overthrown. A new era was dawning. But what would this new era look like? How would the victors divide the spoils of war? And what kind of ruler would Zeus be? The answer, as you'll soon discover, was far from simple. With the Titans defeated, Zeus and his brothers Poseidon and Hades faced the daunting task of dividing the cosmos. They cast lots, a cosmic game of chance that would determine their respective domains. Zeus drew the heavens, becoming the king of the gods, the ruler of the sky, the wielder of the thunderbolt. Poseidon drew the seas, becoming the lord of the oceans, the master of the waves, the shaker of the earth. And Hades drew the underworld, becoming the king of the dead, the ruler of the shadows, the guardian of the afterlife. With their domains established, the Olympians set about building their new home, Mount Olympus, a majestic peak shrouded in clouds, a place of eternal beauty and divine power. Here they would gather, debate, and rule over the cosmos, their decisions shaping the destinies of gods and mortals alike. Zeus, as the king of the gods, faced the challenge of establishing his authority, of creating a stable and just order. He selected 12 of the most powerful and influential gods and goddesses to serve as the Olympian Council, his advisory board, his divine cabinet. These 12 Olympians, each with their own unique powers and personalities, would become the central figures of Greek mythology, their stories echoing through the ages. There was Hera, Zeus's wife and queen, the goddess of marriage and family. Poseidon, the lord of the seas, a powerful and tempestuous god. Hades, the king of the underworld, a mysterious and formidable figure. Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, the provider of sustenance. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, a brilliant strategist and skilled warrior. Apollo, the god of music, poetry and light, a symbol of beauty and harmony. Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, a fierce and independent spirit. Ares, the god of war, a brutal and bloodthirsty figure. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, the embodiment of desire and passion. Hephaestus, the god of the forge, a skilled craftsman and inventor. Hermes, the messenger of the gods, a swift and cunning trickster. And finally, Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, the guardian of the home and family. With the Olympian Council established, Zeus began to shape the cosmos according to his vision. He established laws, set boundaries, and defined the roles of gods and mortals alike. He sought to create a world of order and justice, a world where the divine and mortal realms could coexist in harmony. But the path to peace was not always smooth. Challenges arose, conflicts erupted, and the gods themselves were often the source of chaos and disruption. Zeus, as the king of the gods, had to navigate these turbulent waters, to mediate disputes, to punish wrongdoing, and to maintain the delicate balance of power. And what of Zeus himself? What kind of king was he? Was he a wise and benevolent ruler, a just and compassionate leader? Or was he a tyrannical despot, a capricious and self-serving tyrant? The answer, as you might suspect, is complex. Zeus was a god of immense power, and he wielded that power with both wisdom and recklessness. He was capable of great acts of kindness and generosity, but he was also prone to fits of rage and jealousy. He was a complex and contradictory figure, a reflection of the human condition itself. His reign was marked by both peace and conflict, by both justice and injustice. He was a flawed ruler, but he was also a powerful and influential one. He shaped the cosmos in his image, and his legacy endures to this day. But while the division of the cosmos and the rise of Olympus marked a new beginning, they also sowed the seeds of future conflict. The gods, with their individual ambitions and desires, were not always united, and Zeus, as the king of the gods, faced the constant challenge of maintaining order and preventing chaos from erupting. What you're about to hear changes everything. The seeds of future conflict were already being sown, not just in the halls of Olympus, but in the very heart of Zeus himself. His romantic entanglements, his divine consorts, and his sacred marriages would shape the destiny of gods and mortals alike. The next chapter reveals the tangled web of love, betrayal, and divine offspring that defined Zeus's reign. Chapter 5. The division of the cosmos and the rise of Olympus. Following victory, Zeus and his brothers divide the universe by lot. The establishment of Mount Olympus as the seat of divine power, the selection of the 12 Olympian gods, and Zeus's emergence as the undisputed king of the gods. The dust settled. The echoes of the Titanomachy, that decade-long war that shook the very cosmos, began to fade. But what followed was not peace, not exactly. It was reorganization. A cosmic restructuring the likes of which had never been seen and likely never would be again. Imagine the scale of it. A universe in tatters, gods and titans bruised and weary, and the immense responsibility of rebuilding, of establishing a new order, resting squarely on the shoulders of three brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Victory had been hard won, purchased with the blood and sweat of gods and monsters alike. But now came the even harder task, dividing the spoils, carving up the universe like a freshly conquered kingdom. How do you split eternity? How do you allocate the infinite? The answer, as it often is in these grand mythic tales, was by lot. A roll of the dice, a twist of fate, a chance selection that would determine the destiny of each brother. Zeus, ever the pragmatist, understood the need for order, for a system, however arbitrary, to prevent further conflict. So, with a solemn ceremony, the lots were cast. The anticipation must have been unbearable. The weight of the universe quite literally hanging in the balance. And then the results were revealed. To Poseidon fell the seas. The vast, churning oceans, the hidden depths, the crashing waves, all became his domain. He would rule the watery realms, command the storms, and be master of all that swam within. To Hades fell the underworld. The shadowy realm of the dead, the silent kingdom of departed souls, the place where mortals journeyed after their brief lives on earth. It was a somber, isolating domain, but one of immense power. And to Zeus fell the sky. The heavens, the bright expanse above, the domain of clouds and stars, the realm of storms and lightning. He would be the ruler of the air, the master of thunder, and, by extension, the king of the gods. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, that doesn't seem fair. Zeus got the best deal. And in a way, you'd be right. The sky, from which all things are observed, from which power descends, from which authority emanates, was undeniably the most advantageous position. But it wasn't just about territory. It was about influence, about perception. Zeus, as ruler of the sky, was visible to all. His pronouncements echoed across the heavens. His lightning bolts struck with undeniable force. and his presence was a constant reminder of his power. And so, with the division complete, the brothers began to establish their respective domains. Poseidon plunged into the depths, claiming his trident and establishing his court amidst coral castles and sunken treasures. Hades descended into the shadows, assuming his throne and becoming the silent, unseen ruler of the dead. But Zeus had a different vision. He didn't just want a domain, he wanted a headquarters, a place from which to rule, a symbol of his power, a home for the gods. And so he chose Mount Olympus. Imagine it, a towering peak, piercing the clouds, its slopes adorned with forests and meadows, its summit bathed in eternal sunlight. A place of unparalleled beauty and majesty, a fitting home for the king of the gods. But Olympus wasn't just a mountain, it was a concept. It was the embodiment of divine power, the center of the cosmos, the place where the gods gathered to feast, to plot, to celebrate, and to rule. And who would populate this divine haven? The Olympians, of course. But who the Olympians, and how were they chosen? This is where the story gets even more interesting. Because the selection of the 12 Olympian gods wasn't just about power, it was about personality, about skill, about influence. Zeus as king had the final say, of course. But he also understood the importance of surrounding himself with gods who were not only powerful, but also capable, loyal, and representative of the diverse aspects of the cosmos. So he gathered his siblings, his allies, and his most trusted advisors, and together they began to assemble the pantheon. First, there were his siblings, Hera, his queen, the goddess of marriage and family, Demeter, the goddess of agriculture and the harvest, Hestia, the goddess of the hearth and home, and, of course, Poseidon and Hades, his brothers, who, despite ruling their own domains, were still integral members of the Olympian Council. Then came his children, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, born fully formed from his head, Apollo, the god of music, poetry and light, Artemis, the goddess of the hunt and the moon, Ares, the god of war, Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, Hermes, the messenger god and the patron of travelers and merchants, and Hephaestus, the god of fire and the forge. These were the 12 Olympians, the core of the divine council, the rulers of the cosmos, each with their own unique powers, their own distinct personalities, and their own specific domains. But why 12? What was so special about that number? Some say it was a reflection of the 12 months of the year, the cyclical nature of time, the eternal rhythm of the cosmos. Others say it was simply a matter of practicality, a manageable number for a ruling council. Whatever the reason, the number 12 became synonymous with the Olympian gods, a symbol of their power, their authority, and their eternal reign. And at the head of this council, at the very pinnacle of Mount Olympus, sat Zeus, the king of the gods, the ruler of the sky, the master of thunder. His throne, crafted from gleaming gold and adorned with lightning bolts, was a symbol of his power, his wisdom, and his unwavering authority. But what kind of ruler was Zeus? Was he a benevolent king, a wise and just leader? Or was he a tyrant, a capricious and unpredictable god who ruled with an iron fist? The answer, as you might expect, is complicated. Zeus was, without a doubt, a powerful ruler. He commanded respect, even fear, from both gods and mortals. His lightning bolts were a constant reminder of his power, and his pronouncements were law. But he was also at times impulsive, prone to fits of anger, and easily swayed by his own desires. He was not always fair, not always just, and his actions often had unintended consequences. He was, in short, a flawed god, a powerful, charismatic, and ultimately human figure who struggled to balance his immense power with his own personal desires. And yet, despite his flaws, Zeus was also a visionary leader. He understood the importance of order, of justice, and of maintaining the balance of the cosmos. He worked tirelessly to ensure that the gods worked together, that mortals were treated fairly, and that the universe continued to function according to its divine plan. He established laws, created customs, and appointed judges to oversee the affairs of both gods and mortals. He was, in many ways, the architect of the Olympian order, the one who shaped the pantheon into the powerful and influential force that it became. But even with his best intentions, Zeus faced constant challenges to his authority. From rebellious gods to ambitious mortals, from ancient monsters to unforeseen prophecies, there was always something threatening to disrupt the peace and order of Olympus. And it was in these challenges, in these moments of crisis, that Zeus truly revealed his character. His strength, his wisdom, and his unwavering determination to protect his kingdom and his people. He was not just a king, he was a protector, a guardian of the cosmos, a shield against the darkness, a beacon of hope in a world filled with chaos and uncertainty. And so, as the king of the gods, Zeus ascended his throne on Mount Olympus, surrounded by his loyal council, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The cosmos was divided, the pantheon was assembled, and the reign of Zeus had begun. But this new order, this seemingly stable and secure world, was not without its cracks. Whispers of discontent began to circulate among the Titans, resentment simmering beneath the surface of the Olympian court, and ancient prophecies lurking in the shadows, waiting to be fulfilled. And perhaps the greatest threat of all came not from external forces, but from within Zeus himself, from his own desires, his own ambitions, and his own deeply rooted fears. For Zeus, the king of the gods, was not immune to the temptations of power, the allure of love, or the sting of jealousy. And it was these very human emotions that would ultimately shape his reign and determine the fate of the cosmos. What were the loves of Zeus? The divine consorts and sacred marriages that shaped his life and the pantheon itself? That is the story we will explore next. For the heart of the king, as you're about to discover, held secrets more powerful than any thunderbolt. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious. Where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. Chapter 6. The Loves of Zeus. Divine Consorts and Sacred Marriages. Zeus's romantic relationships with goddesses, beginning with his first wife Metis, and the prophecy that led to her being swallowed, followed by his marriage to Hera and his various divine consorts. The birth of his divine children and their roles in the pantheon. Zeus, now king of the gods, inheritor of the cosmos, conqueror of the Titans, was also, undeniably, a lover. And these loves, these relationships both sacred and profane, would shape the very fabric of the Olympian world and echo down through mortal history. His first great love, and indeed his first wife, was the goddess Metis. She was the embodiment of wisdom, her very name meaning counsel or skill. Zeus, fresh from his victory over Kronos, recognized her immense power and sought her guidance, her companionship, and ultimately her hand in marriage. But there was a prophecy, a chilling whisper from the fates themselves that haunted Zeus's triumph. It foretold that Metis would bear 2 children. The first, a daughter of unmatched power and wisdom, and the second, a son who would one day overthrow Zeus himself, just as he had overthrown his own father. Imagine the weight of that knowledge, the constant shadow of potential betrayal hanging over his newfound reign. Zeus, who had just fought so fiercely for his place, found himself facing a threat from within, from his own bloodline. He loved Metis, he valued her counsel, but the fear of losing everything he had gained gnawed at him. What could he do? How could he secure his rule and yet not betray the woman he loved? The answer, when it came, was as brutal as it was cunning. As Metis approached the time of her first child's birth, Zeus approached her with words of affection and a seemingly innocent request. He complained of a terrible headache, a throbbing pain that only Metis's divine skills could alleviate. He begged her to use her transformative powers to shrink herself down so she could enter his head and ease the ache from within. Metis, unsuspecting of Zeus's true intentions, agreed. She diminished herself, becoming smaller and smaller until she was able to slip inside Zeus's head. And then, in a moment of terrifying finality, Zeus slammed the door shut. He swallowed Metis whole. The goddess of wisdom, the mother of his child, was now trapped within him, silenced and powerless. It was a horrific act, born of fear and a desperate need to control his destiny. You might recoil at such a betrayal, and rightfully so. Yet consider the unbearable pressure Zeus was under, the knowledge that the very universe hung in the balance, dependent on his actions. Did the ends justify the means? That is a question that echoes throughout the ages. Within Zeus, Metis continued to exist, her divine essence undiminished. She began to forge armor and a helmet for her unborn child, a clang and hammer that reverberated within Zeus's skull. The headache he had feigned became a reality, an unbearable throbbing that threatened to split his head open. The other gods were alarmed by Zeus's suffering. They gathered around him, offering remedies and advice, but nothing seemed to work. Finally, Hephaestus, the god of the forge, offered a solution. With a mighty swing of his hammer, he split Zeus's head open. From the gaping wound sprang forth Athena, fully grown and armed for battle. She was a vision of divine power and wisdom, a goddess who embodied both her parents' strengths. The prophecy had come to pass, but not in the way Zeus had feared. The daughter was born, but the son who would overthrow him never would be. Athena became Zeus's favorite child, his trusted advisor and a fierce warrior who fought alongside him in defense of Olympus. She was the embodiment of strategic warfare, a patron of crafts and wisdom, and a powerful symbol of female strength. But what of Metis? She remained within Zeus, her presence a constant reminder of his act of violence. Some say she continued to advise him from within, whispering wisdom into his ear. Others claim she faded away, her essence absorbed into Zeus's own being. Whatever the truth, her influence on Zeus was undeniable, shaping his decisions and guiding his reign. After the grim circumstances surrounding Metis, Zeus sought a queen, a goddess, to share his throne and solidify his rule. He turned his attention to Hera, his sister. Hera was the goddess of marriage, family, and women. She was regal, powerful, and fiercely independent. Zeus pursued her relentlessly, showering her with gifts and declarations of love. But Hera was resistant. She knew Zeus's reputation for infidelity, and she was wary of becoming just another conquest. The stories say that Zeus, frustrated by Hera's rejection, resorted to trickery. He transformed himself into a cowering cuckoo, shivering and vulnerable in a storm. Hera, moved by pity, took the bird into her arms to warm it. And then Zeus revealed himself, seizing the opportunity to declare his love and demand her hand in marriage. Whether Hera was truly won over or simply felt trapped by the situation is a matter of debate. But in the end, she agreed to become his queen. Their marriage was a grand affair, celebrated by all the gods. It was meant to be a symbol of stability and order, a union that would solidify Zeus's reign and bring harmony to Olympus. But the reality was far from idyllic. The marriage of Zeus and Hera was a tempestuous one, filled with jealousy, anger, and constant conflict. Zeus, despite his marriage vows, continued to pursue other goddesses and mortal women, much to Hera's fury. Hera's jealousy was legendary. She was a vengeful goddess, and she directed her wrath not only at Zeus's lovers, but also at their offspring. She persecuted Heracles, the son of Zeus, and the mortal Alcmene relentlessly, setting him impossible tasks and driving him to madness. She hounded Io, a priestess of Hera, who caught Zeus's eye, transforming her into a cow and forcing her to wander the earth. The halls of Olympus echoed with the sounds of their arguments. Zeus would thunder and rage, asserting his authority as king of the gods, while Hera would unleash her righteous fury, accusing him of betrayal and demanding his fidelity. Despite their conflicts, Zeus and Hera remained married. Their union, though fraught with tension, was a cornerstone of the Olympian order. They were the king and queen, the symbols of power and stability, even if their personal lives were anything but stable. Hera bore Zeus several children, including Ares, the god of war, Hebe, the goddess of youth, and Aletheia, the goddess of childbirth. Each of these children played a significant role in the Olympian pantheon, contributing to the complex tapestry of divine relationships. Beyond Metis and Hera, Zeus's affections were scattered amongst a myriad of goddesses, each encounter leaving its mark on the divine landscape. Leto, a Titan goddess of motherhood, was another who caught the eye of the king of gods. Pursued relentlessly by Zeus, she eventually succumbed to his advances, conceiving twins: Apollo, the radiant god of light, music, and prophecy, and Artemis, the fiercely independent goddess of the hunt and the moon. Hera's jealousy followed Leto even into her pregnancy, forbidding her from giving birth on any land touched by the sun. It was only on the floating island of Delos, untouched by sunlight, that Leto finally found refuge and brought forth her divine children. Demeter, the goddess of agriculture and harvest, also found herself the object of Zeus's desire. Their union resulted in Persephone, a goddess of springtime and innocence. However, Persephone's fate took a dark turn when Hades, god of the underworld and Zeus's brother, abducted her, taking her to the depths of the earth to be his queen. Demeter's grief plunged the world into a barren winter, and only through Zeus's intervention was Persephone allowed to return to her mother for part of the year, bringing forth the seasons as she travelled between the realms of the living and the dead. Mnemosyne, the Titan goddess of memory, also drew Zeus's attention. For 9 nights, Zeus lay with Mnemosyne, and from their union were born the 9 Muses, goddesses of the arts and sciences, who inspired creativity and knowledge in mortals. They were the embodiment of inspiration, each muse presiding over a different field of artistic endeavour, from epic poetry to tragedy, from dance to astronomy. These divine consorts, and the children they bore, expanded the Olympian pantheon, creating a complex web of relationships and rivalries that shaped the divine world. Each goddess brought her own unique power and influence to Olympus, enriching the tapestry of divine life. But beyond these sacred marriages and divine consorts, Zeus's affections often strayed into the mortal realm, leading to encounters that would shape the destiny of heroes and empires. And it is these encounters, these dalliances with mortal women, that we shall explore next. What challenges, what triumphs, and what unforeseen consequences arose when the king of the gods descended from Olympus to walk among mortals. Prepare yourself, because the stories you are about to hear will reveal a side of Zeus that is both awe-inspiring and deeply human. Chapter 7: Zeus among mortals, disguises, seductions, and heroic offspring. The god's numerous encounters with mortal women, his various disguises and transformations, and the birth of legendary heroes and heroines. Stories of Europa, Danae, Leda, and others, and how their children shaped the mortal world. Zeus, the king of gods, ruler of Olympus, and wielder of the thunderbolt, was not always confined to the majestic halls above. His gaze often drifted down to the mortal realm, where beauty bloomed and fleeting lives unfolded. And it was there, amongst the daughters of men, that the seed of heroes would be sown. Now, you might think that a god as powerful as Zeus could simply command the affections of any mortal woman he desired. But the allure, perhaps, lay in the challenge, in the artistry of winning hearts, and in the creation of legacies that would echo through the ages. And, of course, in circumventing the ever-watchful eye of Hera, his queen. His methods were as varied as the women he pursued. He was a master of disguise, a shapeshifter who could transform himself into anything he desired. A majestic bull, a shower of gold, a humble shepherd, whatever form would best capture the attention and trust of his chosen mortal. Let's begin with Europa, a princess of Tyre, renowned for her breathtaking beauty. One morning, as she and her handmaidens gathered flowers by the sea, they noticed a magnificent white bull, unlike any they had ever seen. Its coat was as pure as freshly fallen snow, its horns gleamed like polished silver, and its eyes held an unusual intelligence. Europa, captivated by its gentle demeanour, dared to approach the creature. It knelt before her, as if inviting her to climb upon its back. Hesitantly, she obliged, and as soon as she was seated, the bull surged forward, plunging into the sea. Europa cried out in terror, but the bull swam swiftly, carrying her far away from her homeland. It was then, as they reached the shores of Crete, that the bull revealed its true form, Zeus, the king of the gods, standing before her in all his divine glory. Europa, though initially frightened, was soon charmed by Zeus's persuasive words and divine presence. She bore him 3 sons, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Sarpedon, all destined for greatness. Minos, in particular, would become a wise and powerful king of Crete, his name forever linked to the labyrinth and the Minotaur, a testament to the complex and often tragic legacies that could arise from divine encounters. Then there's the tale of Danae, a princess of Argos, whose father, King Acrisius, received a chilling prophecy that he would be killed by his own grandson. To prevent this, he imprisoned Danae in a tower of bronze, hoping to deny her any chance of conceiving a child. But Zeus, ever resourceful, found a way. he transformed himself into a shower of golden rain, which poured down from the heavens and filled Danae's chamber. In this golden embrace, she conceived a son, Perseus, a hero destined to slay Medusa and rescue Andromeda. Think for a moment about the symbolism. A shower of gold representing divine power and irresistible temptation, penetrating even the most impenetrable fortress. It speaks to the unstoppable force of fate and the lengths to which a god will go to fulfill his desires and shape the course of destiny. And what of Leda, the queen of Sparta, renowned for her unparalleled beauty and grace? One day, as she strolled by the river Eurotas, she encountered a magnificent swan, its plumage as white as the driven snow. The swan, seemingly unafraid, approached her with gentle curiosity. Leda, captivated by its beauty, cradled the swan in her arms. But this was no ordinary bird. It was Zeus, once again in disguise, seeking to unite with her. From this union, Leda laid 2 eggs. From one hatched Helen, whose beauty would launch 1,000 ships and ignite the Trojan War, and Clytemnestra, who would later become infamous for her role in the murder of her husband Agamemnon. From the other egg emerged Castor and Pollux, the Dioscuri, twin heroes known for their bravery and skill in horsemanship and boxing. They became symbols of brotherly love and loyalty, eventually ascending to the heavens as the constellation Gemini. Consider the implications. The Trojan War, one of the most epic conflicts in human history, directly resulting from Zeus's dalliance with a mortal queen. The lives of countless heroes and heroines shaped by the consequences of a god's desires. It underscores the profound and often unpredictable impact of the divine on the mortal world. These are but a few examples of Zeus's encounters with mortal women. There was Antiope, who bore him Amphion and Zethus, the founders of Thebes. There was Io, whom he transformed into a heifer to hide her from Hera's wrath, and who eventually gave birth to Epiphus, the ancestor of many royal lines. There was Callisto, a nymph who was transformed into a bear by Hera as punishment for her affair with Zeus, and who was later placed among the stars as the constellation Ursa Major. Each encounter, each transformation, each child born added another layer to the complex tapestry of Greek mythology. These were not simply stories of lust and infidelity. They were tales of power, destiny, and the enduring connection between the divine and the human. But why these disguises? Why not simply reveal himself in his true form? Perhaps it was a matter of practicality, of avoiding Hera's wrath. Or perhaps it was something more profound. Perhaps the disguises allowed Zeus to connect with these women on a more intimate level, to see them as individuals rather than simply objects of his desire. And what of the women themselves? Were they simply victims of Zeus's divine power, or did they possess agency of their own? Some, like Europa, seemed to embrace their fate, becoming powerful queens and mothers of kings. Others, like Io and Callisto, suffered greatly as a result of their encounters with the god. The stories are complex, ambiguous, and open to interpretation. They reflect the enduring fascination with the relationship between gods and mortals, and the eternal questions of fate, free will, and the nature of power. These unions also served a purpose, perhaps a divinely ordained one. The heroes born from these encounters were often imbued with extraordinary strength, courage, and wisdom. They were the champions of mankind, the ones who would slay monsters, overcome impossible obstacles, and shape the course of history. Think of Heracles, the son of Zeus, and the mortal Alcmene. His 12 labors were legendary, feats of strength and endurance that tested the limits of human capability. He cleansed the world of monsters, brought peace to warring lands, and ultimately ascended to Olympus to become a god himself. Or consider Perseus, the slayer of Medusa, who wielded Hermes' winged sandals, Hades' helmet of invisibility, and Athena's polished shield to defeat the Gorgon and rescue Andromeda from a sea monster. His courage and resourcefulness were a testament to his divine heritage. These heroes, these demigods, were the bridge between the divine and the mortal. They embodied the best qualities of both realms, and their stories served as inspiration for generations to come. They were proof that even mortals, with the help of the gods, could achieve greatness. But there was always a price to pay. The lives of these heroes were often filled with hardship, tragedy, and sacrifice. They were tested to their limits, forced to confront their own mortality, and often met with untimely deaths. The story of Zeus among mortals is not a simple tale of divine conquest. It is a complex and multifaceted exploration of power, desire, fate, and the enduring relationship between gods and humans. It is a story that continues to resonate with us today, reminding us of the enduring power of myth and the timeless questions that it explores. And as we delve deeper into the stories of Zeus's mortal offspring, we begin to see a pattern, a subtle thread that connects these seemingly disparate tales. A thread that suggests that Zeus's actions were not always driven by mere lust or whim, but by a deeper, more strategic purpose. A purpose that may have been linked to a prophecy, a looming threat, or a grand design that only the king of the gods could foresee. But to understand that design, we must turn our attention to the challenges that faced Zeus's divine authority, the threats that tested his power and wisdom, and the battles that secured his position as supreme ruler. For next, we will explore the Gigantomachy and the terrifying Typhon. Chapter 8, Challenges to Divine Authority, the Gigantomachy and Typhon, the major threats to Zeus's rule, including the war against the giants and the terrifying battle with the monster, Typhon. How these conflicts tested Zeus's power and wisdom, and how their resolution secured his position as supreme ruler. With the Titans vanquished and imprisoned in the depths of Tartarus, one might think that Zeus's reign was secure. That peace, however, was fleeting. For the earth, Gaia herself still seethed with resentment over the fate of her Titan children. She would not stand idly by while the Olympians lorded over a cosmos built upon the ruins of her offspring. And so, Gaia birthed a new generation of monstrous beings, the giants. These were not the Titans of old, beings of primordial power and cosmic scope. The giants were creatures of brute strength and savage rage, each one born to directly oppose a specific Olympian god. They were immense in size, often depicted with serpentine legs, and their hearts burned with a singular purpose, to overthrow Zeus and his kin. This was the Gigantomachy, the War of the Giants. It wasn't a subtle rebellion or a political maneuver. It was a full-scale assault on Mount Olympus, a brutal and chaotic clash between the established order and a furious, earthbound uprising. Imagine the scene: the serene peaks of Olympus, once a symbol of divine tranquility, now besieged by hordes of monstrous figures, their roars echoing through the heavens. The giants didn't just rely on their immense strength, they were cunning too. They piled mountains upon mountains, attempting to create a stairway to Olympus, a literal pathway to challenge Zeus on his throne. This audacious act was a clear declaration of war, a challenge to the very structure of the Olympian world. Among the most fearsome of the giants was Enceladus, whose very name means inciter of tumult. He was said to be the antithesis of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. Then there was Porphyrion, a towering behemoth who dared to attack Hera herself, the queen of the gods. Each giant represented a specific threat, a concentrated embodiment of chaos aimed at dismantling the Olympian pantheon. The Olympians, despite their divine power, found themselves facing a daunting challenge. The giants were relentless, their attacks savage and unyielding. The earth itself seemed to rise up in their defense, bolstering their strength and fueling their rage. The war raged on, shaking the foundations of the world. Zeus, as always, was at the forefront of the battle. His thunderbolts ripped through the ranks of the giants, but they seemed almost impervious to his divine wrath. The other Olympians fought valiantly as well. Athena, with her strategic brilliance, devised clever plans to counter the giants' brute force. Poseidon, god of the sea, unleashed tidal waves to engulf the advancing hordes. But even their combined power seemed barely enough to stem the tide. One of the key turning points in the Gigantomachy came with the intervention of Heracles, the mortal hero. The fates had decreed that the giants could only be defeated with the help of a mortal. Heracles, son of Zeus, was the chosen champion. His legendary strength and courage proved to be invaluable in the fight against the monstrous beings. Heracles, armed with his club and arrows dipped in the venom of the Hydra, fought alongside the Olympians, targeting the giants with deadly accuracy. His presence bolstered the gods' morale and provided a crucial advantage in the seemingly endless conflict. But even with Heracles' help, the war remained a desperate struggle. What you're about to hear is how the Olympians finally secured victory. It required not only strength and courage, but also a crucial understanding of the giant's vulnerabilities. The gods learned that each giant could only be killed by a specific combination of divine and mortal intervention. This revelation changed the entire course of the war. Zeus, armed with this new knowledge, directed the Olympians and Heracles in a coordinated assault. He identified the specific weaknesses of each giant and orchestrated their downfall with calculated precision. Enceladus was crushed beneath the weight of Sicily, forever entombed beneath the volcanic island. Porphyrion was struck down by a combined attack from Zeus and Heracles. One by one, the giants fell, their monstrous forms collapsing upon the earth. With the giants defeated, the Olympian order was once again secure. But the Gigantomachy had been a close call, a stark reminder of the ever-present threat of chaos and rebellion. Zeus had learned a valuable lesson, that even the king of the gods could be challenged, and that vigilance was essential to maintaining his rule. But the earth's resentment was far from extinguished. Gaia, still grieving for her fallen children, unleashed one final, terrifying weapon against the Olympians: Typhon. Typhon was unlike anything the gods had ever faced. He was a monstrous being of immense size and power, a living embodiment of primal chaos. His body was a grotesque amalgamation of human and animal features, with hundreds of serpent heads sprouting from his thighs. His voice was a cacophony of roars, hisses, and bellows that could shatter mountains and boil the seas. Imagine a creature so immense that its outstretched arms could touch the eastern and western horizons simultaneously. Picture its serpentine heads, each one capable of spewing fire, venom, and storms. This was Typhon, the ultimate challenge to Zeus's authority, a being so terrifying that it sent the Olympian gods fleeing in terror. As Typhon rampaged across the earth, the Olympians abandoned their posts, seeking refuge in Egypt, where they disguised themselves as animals to evade the monster's wrath. Only Zeus, driven by a sense of duty and a refusal to surrender his throne, remained to face the monstrous threat. The battle between Zeus and Typhon was a cataclysmic event, a clash of titans that shook the very foundations of the cosmos. Zeus hurled his thunderbolts with relentless fury, but Typhon deflected them with his immense size and impenetrable hide. The monster retaliated with volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and hurricane-force winds, unleashing a torrent of destruction upon the world. The battle raged across the sky, the earth, and the sea. Zeus, despite his immense power, found himself struggling against Typhon's overwhelming strength and chaotic nature. The monster tore away Zeus's sinews, crippling the king of the gods and leaving him vulnerable. Typhon then imprisoned Zeus in a cave in Cilicia, guarded by the dragon Delphine. With Zeus imprisoned, Typhon seemed poised to seize control of the cosmos. The Olympian order teetered on the brink of collapse. But the other gods, though scattered and terrified, had not given up hope. Hermes, the swift-footed messenger god, and Pan, the rustic god of the wild, devised a clever plan to rescue Zeus. Hermes, using his cunning and speed, managed to steal back Zeus's sinews from Typhon. Pan, with his piercing cries and unsettling appearance, frightened Delphine away from the cave, freeing Zeus from his prison. Restored to his full strength, Zeus renewed his battle against Typhon with even greater fury. This time, armed with his thunderbolts and fueled by righteous anger, Zeus unleashed the full extent of his divine power. He pursued Typhon across the sky, blasting him with relentless barrages of lightning. The monster, weakened and battered, fled in terror, seeking refuge in Mount Etna in Sicily. Zeus, however, was relentless. He hurled the entire Mount Etna upon Typhon, burying the monster beneath the immense weight of the volcano. To this day, the eruptions of Mount Etna are said to be the death throes of Typhon, a constant reminder of the monstrous challenge that Zeus overcame. The defeat of Typhon solidified Zeus's position as the undisputed ruler of the gods. He had faced the ultimate test, stared into the face of primal chaos, and emerged victorious. The Olympians, witnessing his courage and power, reaffirmed their loyalty to their king. The Gigantomachy and the battle with Typhon were pivotal moments in Zeus's reign. They demonstrated his strength, his wisdom, and his unwavering commitment to maintaining order in the cosmos. These conflicts not only secured his throne, but also shaped his character, transforming him from a rebellious young god into a seasoned and respected ruler. He had learned that true power lies not just in brute force but in strategic thinking, unwavering resolve, and the ability to inspire loyalty in others. He was now the unquestioned king of the gods, and his authority was absolute. But what about those who sought a different kind of justice? What of those mortals who felt the weight of divine judgment? Next, we will see Zeus in his role as arbiter, the ultimate judge of both gods and men, and discover the complex and often unpredictable nature of divine justice. Chapter 9. Zeus the Judge. Divine Justice and Mortal Affairs. Zeus's role as the ultimate arbiter of justice, his involvement in mortal conflicts, and his judgments of both gods and humans. The complexities of divine justice and how Zeus's decisions shaped the relationship between the divine and mortal realms. Zeus, the king of the gods, victor of the Titanomachy, ruler of Olympus, he was also the judge, the ultimate arbiter. His pronouncements echoed through the halls of the immortals and rippled down into the mortal realm, shaping destinies and dictating the course of history. But what did it truly mean to be Zeus the judge? Was it simply a matter of wielding power? Or was there a deeper, more complex understanding of justice at play? The very concept of divine justice in ancient Greece was a tangled web. Unlike modern legal systems with their codified laws and impartial courts, Zeus's judgments were often influenced by a multitude of factors: personal relationships, political considerations, and the ever-present whims of the gods. It wasn't always fair by our standards, sometimes it seemed downright capricious. Yet there was a sense that Zeus, despite his flaws, strived to maintain a cosmic balance. He was the upholder of oaths, the protector of suppliants, and the punisher of those who dared to violate the sacred laws of hospitality. Think of it this way: he wasn't just a law enforcer, he was trying to keep the universe from falling apart. His involvement in mortal conflicts was constant. From the Trojan War, where he weighed the fates of heroes on his golden scales, to the countless disputes between cities and kings, Zeus's hand was always present, subtly guiding events, intervening when necessary, and occasionally causing a bit of chaos for his own amusement. Consider the story of King Lycaon of Arcadia. A ruler known for his impiety and cruelty, Lycaon decided to test Zeus's divinity. He invited the king of the gods to a feast, but instead of serving him a proper meal, Lycaon slaughtered a human sacrifice and served the flesh to Zeus. Imagine the horror, the outrage. Zeus, disgusted by Lycaon's barbarity, unleashed his wrath. He transformed Lycaon into a wolf, a creature forever marked by his savage nature. And not only that, Zeus destroyed Lycaon's palace with a thunderbolt and flooded the entire region, punishing the land for the king's wickedness. This tale, while gruesome, highlights a key aspect of Zeus's role as a judge. He was a punisher of hubris, of those who dared to defy the natural order. He wouldn't stand for blatant disregard for the gods. But Zeus's judgments weren't always so straightforward. Sometimes they were tinged with tragedy, born out of difficult choices and conflicting loyalties. Take the case of Prometheus, the titan who dared to defy Zeus by giving fire to humanity. Prometheus, in his compassion for mortals, stole the sacred flame from Olympus and gifted it to mankind, empowering them and allowing them to rise above their animalistic existence. Zeus, enraged by this act of defiance, saw it as a threat to his authority. He believed that humans were meant to be subservient to the gods, not to possess the power of fire. So Zeus chained Prometheus to a rock where an eagle would eternally devour his liver, only for it to regenerate each day, prolonging his torment. It was a cruel and seemingly unjust punishment. Was Prometheus a hero or a criminal? It depends on your perspective. From Zeus's point of view, Prometheus had committed a grave offense. He had challenged the established order and given mortals a power they were not meant to have. But from the perspective of humanity, Prometheus was a savior, a benefactor who had brought them out of the darkness. This story illustrates the inherent complexities of divine justice. There are rarely easy answers, and even the most powerful god can be faced with impossible choices. And you see, sometimes the punishment fit the crime, other times it was about sending a message. The judgments of Zeus also extended to his fellow gods. He wasn't afraid to discipline even the most powerful Olympians if they stepped out of line. This in the story of Ares, the god of war. Ares was known for his bloodlust and his love of conflict. He often stirred up trouble among mortals, reveling in the chaos and carnage. On one occasion, Ares killed Poseidon's son, Halirohotheus. Poseidon, enraged by the murder of his son, demanded justice from Zeus. Zeus, recognizing the severity of Ares' crime, ordered him to stand trial before the other Olympian gods. Ares was found guilty and sentenced to a period of exile. This demonstrates that even the gods were subject to Zeus's authority and that he was willing to punish them for their transgressions. But there were times when Zeus's judgment seemed, well, questionable. His own personal biases and desires often clouded his judgment. His numerous affairs with mortal women, for example, often led to complicated situations and unfair treatment of his wife, Hera. Consider the story of Io, a priestess of Hera who caught Zeus's eye. Zeus, smitten with Io, transformed her into a heifer to hide her from Hera's jealous gaze. But Hera, suspecting Zeus's infidelity, demanded the heifer as a gift. Zeus, unable to refuse without revealing his deception, reluctantly handed Io over to Hera. Hera, not content with simply possessing Io, had her guarded by Argus, a giant with 100 eyes. Argus kept Io imprisoned, constantly watching her and preventing her from escaping. Zeus, feeling guilty for Io's plight, sent Hermes to rescue her. Hermes lulled Argus to sleep with his enchanting music and then slew him, freeing Io. However, Hera, still furious, sent a gadfly to torment Io, driving her mad and forcing her to wander the earth in a state of perpetual suffering. This story highlights the darker side of Zeus's judgments. His actions, driven by lust and a desire to avoid conflict with Hera, resulted in the unjust suffering of an innocent mortal. So, how did Zeus's decision shape the relationship between the divine and mortal realms? Well, for one thing, they instilled a sense of awe and fear in the hearts of mortals. They knew that the gods were watching them and that their actions had consequences. The belief in divine justice, however imperfect, served as a deterrent against wrongdoing. Mortals were more likely to uphold their oaths, respect the gods, and treat each other with fairness if they believed that Zeus would ultimately punish those who transgressed. But the relationship between the divine and mortal realms was also shaped by the stories of Zeus's interventions in human affairs. These stories, passed down through generations, provided mortals with a framework for understanding the world around them. They explained the origins of cities, the causes of wars, and the rise and fall of kings. They also offered a glimmer of hope. Mortals knew that even in the face of adversity, the gods could intervene on their behalf. They could pray to Zeus for justice, for protection, or for guidance. And sometimes their prayers would be answered. Of course, the relationship wasn't always harmonious. Mortals often resented the gods' interference in their lives, especially when it seemed arbitrary or unfair. They questioned the gods' motives and accused them of playing with human lives like pawns on a chessboard. The very concept of free will was constantly being challenged by the idea of divine intervention. If the gods could control human destiny, then what was the point of making choices? Was everything predetermined? These questions continue to resonate even today. We still grapple with the concepts of justice, fairness, and the role of fate in our lives. The stories of Zeus the Judge, with all their complexities and contradictions, offer us a glimpse into the ancient world's understanding of these profound issues. But the complexities of divine justice didn't end there. Zeus wasn't just concerned with punishing wrongdoing, he was also involved in resolving disputes between mortals. He often acted as a mediator, offering his wisdom and guidance to help settle conflicts and restore peace. One famous example is the judgment of Paris. Paris, a Trojan prince, was tasked with deciding which of the three goddesses, Hera, Athena, or Aphrodite, was the fairest. Each goddess offered Paris a bribe. Hera promised him power, Athena promised him wisdom, and Aphrodite promised him the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris, swayed by Aphrodite's promise, chose her as the fairest. This decision, as you might imagine, angered Hera and Athena, who vowed to bring about the downfall of Troy. Paris's judgment, driven by personal desire rather than impartiality, ultimately led to the Trojan War, a conflict that devastated both the Greeks and the Trojans. This story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of biased judgment. It shows that even when attempting to resolve conflicts, personal desires and prejudices can cloud one's perception and lead to disastrous consequences. And in the end, was it really Zeus's call? Did he really trust Paris to make a decision that would impact so many? Zeus also played a role in shaping the laws and customs of mortal societies. He was seen as the source of all authority, and his pronouncements were often invoked to justify legal decisions and political actions. Kings claimed to rule by divine right, and laws were often attributed to Zeus's will. However, this connection between divine authority and mortal law also had its drawbacks. It could be used to justify tyranny and oppression. Rulers could claim that their actions were sanctioned by Zeus, even when they were clearly unjust or immoral. The interpretation of Zeus's will was often subjective, and it could be manipulated to serve the interests of those in power. This led to a constant struggle between those who sought to uphold justice and those who sought to exploit the system for their own gain. The concept of divine justice, therefore, was a double-edged sword. It could inspire acts of great kindness and compassion, but it could also be used to justify acts of great cruelty and oppression. It was a powerful force that shaped the moral and political landscape of the ancient world. And let's not forget the role of fate in all of this. The ancient Greeks believed that even the gods were subject to the dictates of fate. Zeus, despite his power, couldn't always change the course of events. He could try to influence them, but ultimately fate would have its way. This belief in fate added another layer of complexity to the concept of divine justice. If everything was predetermined, then how could mortals be held responsible for their actions? Was it fair to punish someone for doing something that was destined to happen? The ancient Greeks grappled with these questions for centuries, and they never reached a definitive answer. The relationship between free will and fate remains a topic of debate even today. Was Zeus a puppet or a puppeteer? The stories of Zeus the Judge offer us a fascinating glimpse into the ancient world's understanding of justice, morality, and the relationship between the divine and mortal realms. They remind us that even the most powerful beings are not immune to the complexities of life, and that the pursuit of justice is a never-ending journey. But the influence of Zeus the Judge extended far beyond the realm of law and politics. His judgments also had a profound impact on the arts and literature of ancient Greece. Playwrights, poets, and sculptors all drew inspiration from the stories of Zeus's interventions in human affairs. The tragedies of Sophocles and Euripides, for example, often explored the themes of justice, fate, and the consequences of defying the gods. Characters like Oedipus and Antigone were forced to confront impossible choices, and their stories served as a reflection of the human condition. The sculptures of Phidias and Praxiteles captured the power and majesty of Zeus, portraying him as a wise and just ruler. These works of art served as a reminder of the gods' presence in the world and their influence on human lives. The stories of Zeus the Judge also inspired countless myths and legends. These tales, passed down through generations, entertained and educated the people of ancient Greece. They taught them about their history, their values, and their place in the cosmos. The legacy of Zeus the Judge continues to resonate even today. His stories are still read and studied in schools and universities around the world. His image is still used in art and popular culture. The concept of divine justice, as imperfect as it may be, remains a powerful force in our lives. We still strive to create a more just and equitable world, and we still look to the stories of the past for guidance and inspiration. But what about the future? What does the future hold for Zeus the Judge? Will his legacy endure? Will his stories continue to be told? Only time will tell. However, there was a prophecy, a constant whisper in the back of Zeus's mind. A prophecy that spoke of a son, a child who would one day surpass him, a child destined to overthrow the king of the gods. This prophecy, more than any legal code or divine decree, would shape Zeus's actions, influencing his judgments and dictating his relationships for millennia to come. But what was this prophecy, and how would it impact the fate of Olympus? That, my friends, is a story for another time. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. Chapter 10. The Prophecy of the Greater Sun. Zeus's ongoing concern with the prophecy that a son would overthrow him his relationships with Metis and Thetis, and how this fear influenced his actions. The birth of Athena and the careful management of divine succession. Zeus, the king of the gods, the wielder of the thunderbolt, lived under a shadow. Not a shadow cast by some earthly mountain, but one born of prophecy, a chilling whisper that echoed in the halls of Olympus. It spoke of a son, a child of greater power than even he, destined to overthrow him and claim his throne. Imagine the weight of such a prediction, the constant awareness that your own strength, your own dominion, could be undone by the very legacy you sought to create. This wasn't mere paranoia, it was a cosmic certainty woven into the fabric of fate itself. It gnawed at Zeus, influencing his decisions, shaping his relationships, and ultimately defining his reign. The first thread in this tapestry of fear was Metis, a Titan goddess of wisdom and cunning. Zeus, captivated by her intellect and beauty, took her as his first wife. He believed her wisdom would be an invaluable asset, a guiding light in his rule. What he didn't anticipate was the prophecy that clung to her name. It was foretold that Metis would bear 2 children, a daughter of unparalleled wisdom and strength, and then a son destined to dethrone Zeus himself. The fear gripped him. He loved Metis, yes, but the survival of his reign outweighed even the deepest affection. What could he do? How could he circumvent the unyielding hand of fate? The solution, born of desperation and a twisted sense of self-preservation, was as brutal as it was ingenious. Zeus tricked Metis, lulling her with sweet words and playful challenges, until she transformed herself into a fly. In that moment, he swallowed her whole. He consumed her wisdom, her power, and the threat she represented. Can you imagine the horror of that moment, the betrayal, the violation, the utter disregard for the woman he claimed to love? But for Zeus, it was a necessary evil, a desperate attempt to cling to the power he had fought so hard to attain. He believed he had averted the prophecy, he believed he had cheated fate. But the fates, as they often do, had a different plan. Metis, though imprisoned within Zeus, continued to live and grow. She began to forge armor and a helmet for her unborn daughter. The constant hammering and crafting caused Zeus unbearable pain. The pain grew, a throbbing agony that spread through his head, threatening to shatter his very being. He cried out, a sound that shook Olympus, summoning all the gods and goddesses to his side. He pleaded for help, his divine brow furrowed in torment. Finally, Hephaestus, the god of the forge, ever resourceful, offered a solution. With a mighty blow, he split Zeus's head open with an axe. And from that fissure, fully formed and clad in armor, sprang Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare. Imagine the spectacle. A fully grown goddess emerging from the head of the king of the gods, a testament to the power of Metis and the resilience of fate. Athena, the daughter who should have been the precursor to his downfall, was now a powerful ally, a symbol of his own cunning and strength. Or so he thought. The birth of Athena, while seemingly a victory, did little to quell Zeus's anxieties. The prophecy of the sun still loomed, a constant reminder of his precarious position. He became increasingly wary, his gaze ever watchful, searching for any sign of rebellion, any hint of a challenge to his authority. The next chapter in this saga of fear involved Thetis, a beautiful sea nymph. A new prophecy arose, claiming that Thetis would bear a son greater than his father. Both Zeus and Poseidon desired Thetis, drawn to her beauty and the power she wielded as a sea goddess. But the prophecy cast a long shadow. The thought of fathering a son who could overthrow them both sent shivers down their immortal spines. Imagine the dilemma. To claim the woman they desired meant risking their own destruction. To deny their desires meant admitting their fear. The gods, even the mighty Zeus, were not immune to the whims of fate. He chose self-preservation. He suppressed his desire and arranged for Thetis to marry a mortal, the hero Peleus. He reasoned that a mortal father would limit the son's potential, ensuring his loyalty and preventing any challenge to his divine authority. This union produced Achilles, the greatest warrior of the Trojan War. Achilles, though mortal, possessed strength and skill that rivaled the gods themselves. He was a force of nature on the battlefield, a hero whose name would echo through the ages. Did Zeus regret his decision? Did he see in Achilles a reflection of the son he had feared, a mortal embodiment of divine power that threatened to disrupt the established order? perhaps. But Achilles, bound by his mortal limitations and driven by his own heroic ambitions, never challenged Zeus's rule. The prophecy, in this instance, seemed to have been averted. But the fear lingered, a constant companion to the king of the gods. He learned to manage his fears, to channel them into vigilance and strategic planning. He used his power to maintain order, to suppress any potential threats, and to secure his position as the supreme ruler of Olympus. Zeus's actions, driven by this constant fear, had far-reaching consequences. They shaped the destinies of gods and mortals alike. They fueled wars, inspired heroes, and ultimately defined the age of the gods. He was a king haunted by his own mortality, a ruler forever wrestling with the forces of fate. But the management of divine succession wasn't solely about suppressing potential threats. It was also about ensuring the continuation of the Olympian order, about establishing a system of power that would endure for ages to come. Zeus understood that his legacy depended not only on his own strength, but also on the strength of his children, the gods and goddesses who would inherit his domain. He carefully cultivated relationships with his offspring, guiding them, testing them, and preparing them for their roles in the divine hierarchy. He delegated responsibilities, entrusting them with domains and powers that reflected their individual strengths and talents. He knew that a united Olympus was a strong Olympus, and that his own survival depended on the loyalty and cooperation of his divine children. He fostered a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose, encouraging them to work together, to support each other, and to defend their collective power against any external threats. But even with his best efforts, tensions remained. The gods and goddesses, like any family, had their own rivalries, their own ambitions, and their own grievances. Jealousy, envy, and resentment simmered beneath the surface, threatening to erupt into open conflict. Zeus, ever vigilant, had to constantly mediate disputes, to quell rebellions, and to maintain a delicate balance of power. He was a master of diplomacy, a skilled negotiator, and a ruthless enforcer when necessary. He used his power to punish those who defied him, to reward those who served him faithfully, and to maintain his position as the ultimate arbiter of divine justice. His reign was a constant balancing act, a tightrope walk between fear and ambition, between control and chaos. He was a flawed god, driven by his own insecurities and desires, but he was also a powerful leader, a wise ruler, and the undisputed king of Olympus. The prophecy of the greater sun remained a nagging concern, a constant reminder of his own vulnerability. But Zeus, through his cunning, his strength, and his unwavering determination, managed to defy fate, to secure his reign, and to shape the destiny of the gods and mortals alike. He learned to live with the fear, to use it as a source of motivation, and to transform it into a tool for maintaining his power. He was a king defined by his struggles, a ruler forged in the fires of prophecy, and a god who ultimately triumphed over his own fears. You see, Zeus's story isn't just about power and dominion. It's about the human condition, about the universal struggle against fear, insecurity, and the relentless march of time. It's a story that resonates with us even today, reminding us that even the mightiest among us are not immune to the anxieties and uncertainties of life. He was a god, yes, but he was also a father, a husband, a leader, and a flawed individual trying to make his way in a world filled with both wonder and peril. He made mistakes, he suffered losses, and he faced challenges that would have broken lesser beings. But he persevered, he adapted, and he ultimately emerged victorious, not because he was invincible, but because he was resilient. So, as we reflect on the reign of Zeus, let us remember not only his power and his glory, but also his struggles and his fears. Let us remember that even the king of the gods was, in his own way, just like us. But this careful dance of power, this meticulous planning and calculated decision-making, was only one facet of Zeus's long and complex reign. For as much as he feared the prophecy, as much as he sought to control his destiny, the wheels of fate continued to turn. And the echoes of those turning wheels brings us to a new revelation, a fresh exploration of the heroic age and the monumental war that would pit the gods against each other, the Trojan War. But that is a story for another time, another chapter in this ever-unfolding saga. Chapter 11, The Golden Age of Heroes, Zeus's influence during the Age of Great Heroes, his role in the Trojan War, and his relationships with legendary figures like Heracles, Perseus, and others. How the king of the gods shaped the greatest stories of the heroic age. The reign of Zeus, now firmly established, ushered in what mortals would come to know as the Golden Age of Heroes. It was a time when the line between gods and men blurred, when extraordinary feats were not just whispered in legends, but walked the earth. You see Zeus, in his multifaceted role as king, lover, and father, directly influence the lives of these heroes, shaping their destinies and, in turn, shaping the very fabric of human history. Think of it this way: Olympus wasn't some distant, uninvolved court. It was a celestial stage where dramas unfolded that had profound consequences for the mortal world. And Zeus, more often than not, was the director, sometimes subtle, sometimes overt, always present. Consider Heracles, perhaps the most celebrated of all heroes. Born of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, his life was a tapestry woven with divine intervention and mortal struggle. From the very beginning, Hera, in her unrelenting jealousy, sought to destroy him. But Zeus, though unable to directly shield his son from Hera's wrath, subtly guided him, ensuring that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, Heracles would prevail. It wasn't always about direct intervention, mind you. Often, it was about placing opportunities, challenges really, in the hero's path. The 12 labors, for instance. Each one, a trial designed not just to test Heracles' strength, but also to refine his character, to mold him into the hero he was destined to become. And while Hera orchestrated many of these trials, you could argue that Zeus allowed them, knowing that through them, Heracles would achieve immortality, a place among the gods. But what about those heroes less directly connected to Zeus by blood? Did he influence them too? Absolutely. Take Perseus, for example. His mother, Danae, was imprisoned by her father, Acrisius, after an oracle foretold that her son would kill him. Zeus, captivated by Danae's beauty, visited her in the form of golden rain, and Perseus was conceived. Now, Zeus didn't just impregnate Danae and then disappear. He subtly intervened throughout Perseus's life. He guided him to the Graeae, the 3 sisters who shared one eye and one tooth, and compelled them to reveal the location of the Stygian nymphs who provided Perseus with the tools he needed to slay Medusa. Think about that for a moment. Zeus, king of the gods, orchestrating the downfall of a Gorgon. It wasn't just about helping his grandson. It was about maintaining order, about ensuring that the monstrous forces of chaos didn't overwhelm the mortal world. Perseus's victory over Medusa was, in a way, a victory for Olympus, a testament to the power of divine intervention in the affairs of men. And then there's the Trojan War, a conflict so epic that it defined an era. Zeus's involvement in this war was complex, to say the least. On the one hand, he was bound by fate, unable to directly alter the course of events. On the other hand, he subtly influenced the war, favoring one side or the other, depending on his whims and the pleas of the other gods. Remember, the Trojan War wasn't just a conflict between Greeks and Trojans, it was a clash of divine wills. Hera and Athena, enraged by Paris's judgment that Aphrodite was the most beautiful goddess, favored the Greeks. Aphrodite, naturally, supported the Trojans, and Zeus, caught in the middle, tried to maintain a semblance of neutrality, even though his own affections often swayed him. He allowed the war to rage, knowing that it would result in the deaths of countless heroes, both Greek and Trojan. But he also knew that it would give rise to new legends, new stories that would be told for generations to come. And in a way, that was his ultimate goal, to ensure that the Age of Heroes continued, that the memory of these extraordinary individuals would never fade. Consider Achilles, the greatest of the Greek warriors. His mother, Thetis, was a sea nymph, and Zeus had once desired her. However, a prophecy foretold that Thetis would bear a son greater than his father. Fearing that this son would overthrow him, Zeus arranged for Thetis to marry a mortal, Peleus. But even though Achilles wasn't Zeus's son, the king of the gods still played a role in his destiny. He knew that Achilles was destined to die young, but he also knew that his name would live on forever. He allowed Achilles to achieve glory on the battlefield, knowing that his sacrifice would inspire generations of heroes to come. And what about Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca? His journey home after the Trojan War was fraught with peril, and he faced numerous challenges, from the Cyclops Polyphemus to the enchantress Circe. Zeus didn't directly intervene to help Odysseus, but he allowed Athena, his daughter, to guide and protect him. Think of it as a subtle nudge, a divine helping hand. Athena's intervention ensured that Odysseus would eventually return home to his wife, Penelope, and reclaim his kingdom. And in doing so, she cemented his place as one of the greatest heroes of all time. But Zeus's influence wasn't always benevolent. Sometimes his actions had unintended consequences, leading to tragedy and suffering. Take the story of Oedipus, for example. An oracle foretold that Oedipus would kill his father and marry his mother. To prevent this from happening, his parents abandoned him as a baby. However, fate, guided by the gods, had other plans. Oedipus eventually returned to Thebes, unaware of his true parentage, and fulfilled the prophecy. He killed his father, married his mother, and brought ruin upon his kingdom. Now, Zeus wasn't directly responsible for Oedipus's actions, but he allowed the prophecy to come to pass. Perhaps he wanted to remind mortals that they were not in control of their own destinies, that even the most carefully laid plans could be undone by the whims of the gods. Or perhaps it was simply a cruel game, a way to amuse himself and the other Olympians. Whatever the reason, the story of Oedipus serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that even in the age of heroes, the gods held all the power. And Zeus, as their king, was the ultimate arbiter of fate. You see, the golden age of heroes wasn't just about extraordinary feats and legendary battles. It was about the complex relationship between gods and men, about the ways in which divine intervention shaped mortal lives. And Zeus, in his various roles, was at the center of it all. He was the father of heroes, the orchestrator of events, the ultimate judge. His actions, both benevolent and malevolent, helped to define the age and to create the legends that we still tell today. But the age of heroes, like all ages, eventually came to an end. The world changed, and the gods, for the most part, withdrew from direct involvement in mortal affairs. But their influence, their legacy, lived on in the stories that were passed down from generation to generation. And Zeus, the king of the gods, remained on Olympus, watching over the world, his power undiminished, his presence still felt, even if unseen. He had shaped the age of heroes, and in doing so, he had shaped the course of human history. But as the age of heroes faded, a new concern began to occupy Zeus's thoughts. The prophecy that had haunted him for so long, the prophecy that a son would overthrow him, continued to weigh heavily on his mind. He had managed to avoid it with Metis and Thetis, but the fear remained, a constant reminder of the precariousness of his power. And so, Zeus turned his attention to the future, to the question of divine succession. He knew that he couldn't rule forever, and he wanted to ensure that his reign would be followed by a period of stability and order. But how could he guarantee that? How could he prevent the prophecy from coming to pass? The answer, as you might suspect, lay in a carefully orchestrated plan, a series of decisions designed to secure his legacy and to maintain his position as the supreme ruler of the cosmos. But this discovery was only the beginning, because next we uncover the lengths to which Zeus would go to secure his throne and the unexpected consequences of his choices. Chapter 12. The Eternal Reign. Legacy of the Thunder King. Zeus's lasting impact on both divine and mortal worlds, his evolution from young rebel to wise ruler, and his enduring presence in the cosmos. Reflections on his complex character and the timeless themes his story represents, bringing our journey to a peaceful close. And so, we arrive at the twilight of our grand saga, the culmination of a journey that has spanned eons and traversed realms both divine and mortal. We stand now on the precipice of understanding Zeus's eternal reign, the legacy of the Thunder King. From the moment Rhea secreted him away in that Cretan cave, a seed of defiance was sown. He was no mere godling destined for oblivion, but a force of nature waiting to be unleashed. Remember the terror of Kronos, the insatiable hunger that consumed his own offspring. Zeus was the antidote, the promise of a new order forged in the fires of rebellion. His youth, spent hidden on Mount Ida, was a crucible. Nourished by the nymph Adrasteia, protected by the Curetes, and sustained by the goat Amalthea, he grew in strength and wisdom. But it was more than just physical prowess that defined him. It was the growing awareness of his divine heritage, the subtle whispers of destiny that echoed in his heart. He knew with an unwavering certainty that he was destined for something greater than a life of pastoral tranquility. The liberation of his siblings was a turning point. Imagine the scene: the clever Meti, brewing a potion potent enough to force Kronos to regurgitate his swallowed children. The emergence of Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Hestia and Demeter blinking in the light after what must have felt like an eternity in the belly of the beast. A family reunited, bound by a shared trauma and a burning desire for vengeance. And then the Titanomachy. 10 long years of unrelenting warfare, the clash of titans, the earth trembling beneath their feet, the sky ablaze with divine power. Zeus, the young upstart, wielding the lightning bolts forged by the Cyclopes, a weapon of unimaginable force. He learned quickly, adapting his strategies, forging alliances, and leading his Olympian brethren to victory against seemingly insurmountable odds. The division of the cosmos was a gamble, a roll of the dice that determined the fate of the universe. Zeus drew the heavens, Poseidon the seas, and Hades the underworld. A new world order was established, with Mount Olympus as its glittering capital. The 12 Olympians, each with their own unique powers and personalities, ascended to their thrones, ready to shape the destiny of gods and mortals alike. Zeus, the king of the gods. But his reign was not without its complexities, its contradictions. His romantic escapades, his divine consorts, his mortal affairs. The prophecy that haunted him, the fear that a son would one day overthrow him. He was a flawed ruler, driven by passion and ambition, but also by a deep-seated desire to maintain order and stability in a chaotic world. Think of Metis, his first wife, the embodiment of wisdom and cunning. The prophecy that foretold the birth of a son who would surpass his father. The desperate act of swallowing her whole, hoping to contain the threat. But from that act of desperation came Athena, the goddess of wisdom, born fully formed from Zeus's head, a testament to the enduring power of knowledge and strategy. And then Hera, his queen, the embodiment of marriage and fidelity, despite her husband's numerous infidelities. Her jealousy was legendary, her wrath unforgiving. Yet, she was also a powerful goddess in her own right, a protector of women and a symbol of marital stability, however paradoxical that may seem. His encounters with mortal women were legendary. Europa, carried away on the back of a bull. Danae, impregnated by a shower of gold. Leda, seduced by a swan. From these unions sprang heroes and heroines who shaped the mortal world. Minos, Perseus, Helen of Troy. Each encounter a testament to Zeus's power and influence, but also to the enduring allure of the divine for mortal souls. But Zeus's reign was not without its challenges. The Gigantomachy, the war against the giants, born of Gaia's rage, seeking to avenge the Titans. The monstrous Typhon, a creature of unimaginable power, threatening to engulf the world in darkness. Each conflict tested Zeus's power and wisdom, forcing him to confront his own limitations and to reaffirm his commitment to maintaining order. He was the ultimate arbiter of justice, the one who weighed the scales and dispensed rewards and punishments. His judgments were not always fair, not always consistent, but they were always final. He intervened in mortal conflicts, shaping the course of history, sometimes subtly, sometimes directly. He was both revered and feared, loved and hated, a figure of immense power and enduring influence. The prophecy of the greater sun loomed large in his mind. He knew that the fates had decreed that one day a son would rise to challenge his authority. This fear influenced his actions, shaping his relationships with both goddesses and mortals. It led him to pursue Thetis, the sea nymph, until he learned that her son was destined to be greater than his father. He quickly arranged her marriage to the mortal Peleus, ensuring that her offspring would remain within the mortal realm. The golden age of heroes was a testament to Zeus's influence. He was the father of Heracles, the greatest of all heroes, whose 12 labors brought order to the world and established the foundations of civilization. He guided Perseus on his quest to slay Medusa, and he played a pivotal role in the Trojan War, orchestrating events from Mount Olympus, manipulating gods and mortals alike to achieve his desired outcome. Think of the Trojan War. a conflict sparked by a stolen beauty, fueled by the passions of gods and mortals. Zeus, torn between his loyalty to his wife Hera, who favored the Greeks, and his affection for the Trojans, found himself in a precarious position. He allowed the war to rage on, knowing that it would ultimately shape the destiny of both gods and men. And what of Heracles, a demigod, born of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, burdened with extraordinary strength and a tragic fate? His 12 labors were a testament to his resilience and his unwavering commitment to justice. He cleansed the world of monsters and brought order to chaos, earning his place among the immortals. Even as the ages turned and new gods rose in prominence, the echoes of Zeus's reign reverberated through the cosmos. His laws, his decrees, his very essence shaped the world that followed. He was the foundation upon which all subsequent mythologies were built, the archetype of the all-powerful, all-knowing ruler. So, what is the lasting impact of Zeus, the Thunder King? It is not simply in the temples built in his honor or the sacrifices offered at his altars. It is in the very fabric of our understanding of power, justice, and the relationship between gods and mortals. He was a complex and contradictory figure, a ruler who was both benevolent and tyrannical, wise and foolish, loving and cruel. He was a young rebel who overthrew his tyrannical father, a warrior who led the Olympians to victory against the Titans, a lover who fathered countless heroes and heroines, and a judge who dispensed justice to both gods and mortals. He was, in short, the embodiment of the human condition, writ large on a cosmic scale. His story is a reminder that even the most powerful beings are not immune to flaws and contradictions. It is a testament to the enduring power of ambition, love, and the relentless pursuit of justice. It is a story that continues to resonate with us today, thousands of years after it was first told. As we draw our journey to a close, let us reflect on the timeless themes that Zeus's story represents. The struggle between order and chaos, the conflict between generations, the enduring power of love and loss, the complexities of justice, and the enduring search for meaning in a world that is often unpredictable and unfair. Zeus's reign may have ended, but his legacy lives on. In the stories we tell, in the art we create, and in the very way we understand the world around us. He is a reminder that even the most powerful figures are ultimately subject to the forces of fate and the passage of time. But this discovery was only the beginning, because next we uncover the tale of a hero whose destiny was forever intertwined with that of Zeus himself, the mighty Heracles, and the 12 impossible labors that secured his place among the stars. Prepare yourselves, for the trials of Heracles are a journey into the heart of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring power of the human spirit,